source. So as you close your eyes and on a deep inhale, come home, reclaim all of your attention particles from wherever they may be hanging out and scintillating out there. Come home to your heart, come home to the spacious true nature that we all share, the awake awareness in which everything arises. And when we know that that's the source, when we acknowledge that that's the source, then we value this home. We value this spaciousness. We value this awake awareness in which everything arises. And in that valuing, we realign ourselves with true nature. With that valuing, we come home to ourselves, and out of that place, the effulgence, the scintillating possibilities of aliveness come alive in our world, in our inner being, in our hearts, and with all of us, acknowledging our connection. In this oneness, we reside, we move, breathe, and have our being. And in knowing this, we can relax out of fear, out of concern, and into the safety of the awake awareness that is the one I am. And so it is.
Deborah just came in and Kim entered.
Who came in here?
Deborah.
Deborah. Hi, sweetheart. There you are. I see you. Well, kind of. Yeah, sometimes when we're going to gather like this, and I sit in the mornings for not very long, actually, and drop in, especially if I'm going to be with a group of like-minded awarenesses, and touching into what may be happening in this shared field of awake awareness. What occurred to me this morning is that it's a very radical understanding to realize that whatever it is within your world, within your consciousness that you're dealing with is the way you contribute to this collective reality. We bandy about in all of the circles that all of us have been a part of over the decades, we bandy about the idea of oneness, but the way in which it actually works is oftentimes overlooked. Whatever you're doing in your world with whatever looks like, in quotes, yours, that's the frequency contribution you're making to the larger reality. There's nothing that doesn't impinge on that. We are not apart from that. We don't get any time off from that. We don't get to sit in our prayer closets and meditate and have a singular or solitary experience, hoping that our world can be enlightened that way. There is one awake awareness, and each of us has access to that through our specific idea of who we are as a person, and how we come home to that, knowing ourselves not as victim, not as perpetrator, off the spectrum of the victim, persecutor, rescuer triangle that all of us have psychologically known about and been caught up. Usually all of us have been caught up in that dynamic for years. And we elevate, it's like we go meta. You know, I always say, if the bottom of the triangle, the baseline is the polarity, which is what our language insists on, and is the limit of our expression, because every word we say implies an opposite. When that baseline is the pairs of opposites, and we go meta to that at the apex of that implied triangle, then we are in a position from that place to create a new reality. We do it for ourselves as we come home to our true nature, allowing the limited self-concept that got installed with an early experience of separation, of fear, of not being the one. We all know that wounded arena. It happened for any incarnating being on this planet, regardless of what midwife stood there to receive him or her. It's still the experience of incarnating here, because you have to have a frequency that matches the fear frequency and polarity of this 3D reality before you would show up here. You can't drop in without that. So, you know, we come in, we don't come in tabula rasa with a clean slate. We come in already at a particular frequency, and the possibility in this incarnation, especially at this intersection in what we call history, is for us to wake up out of that limitation, and in doing so, create a new reality. When we do it within and for ourselves, we know that our reality changes. Everybody in this room has had an experience of a shift in consciousness, and then it's like, where did they come from? Where did that phone call come from? Where did that opportunity come from? Because it's a frequency reality, and when you shift the frequency out of the insistence of some slice or some valence of victim, then your world shows up differently. This world is a projection. The place that we work, the place that I work with here and with anybody else who's willing, is the place to see through what has obfuscated our part in what's going on, so that we arise in frequency out of fear and into connection with ourselves, and in that space know ourselves as this. We are the world is you. That great quote from Anais Nin, you don't see the world as it is, you see the world as you are. That's what I call the distortion field. And we talk about how that lens gets put in place with the early wounding conclusion. So we're all understanding this. I think the time's up for us to play around there much anymore. I think we're being called into, especially with world circumstances that have shown up like on this island and in the larger, what we call reality, is that it's incumbent upon us. It's not just about me anymore, although at that intersection of what I call me, I have access. I have access to making a difference. I have access to creating a new reality, a new heaven and a new earth. That's our access point. You do your work, you clear that illusion of being a victim, or I'm not good enough, or I'm not the one, and you are participating energetically in creating a new reality. You stay stuck in that, and you will be along with however many billions there are. But this is not a numbers game. This is a consciousness game. And in that, it's very different. In that, we have power. That power is pointed to in the work of Rupert Sheldrake and the apocryphal story that all of us knew 3 decades ago called the 100th Monkey Story. It points to a morphogenetic field in consciousness regarding anything, whether it's the 4-minute mile or the victim identity, whatever it is, we in our own work have access to recreating, creating a new reality, a new world. So as we do that with our own work, it's so, it's fascinating to me how personal and available it is when I know that what I have to do is to see through the lie that of a, what was I going to say? Of an I am not good enough. And taking the name of all that is in vain with the I am bad, I am fraught, I am ugly, I am, whatever that comes after that, that's how we take the name of our true nature as the one in vain by attaching a label to it, defining it as this limited, fear-based, wounded identity. When we take that on, it's rather miraculous to me that in our taking that on, we have, again, access to participating in a new reality. I believe that that's what has, that's what's arising in this 3D reality, which I consider to be a projection of consciousness, just like a nighttime dream. But this time we can create a new possibility. It's rather stunning to realize what I'm trying to point to with a lot of verbiage, but that you can, in the work that you do to come true north on your own behalf, participate in the shift in reality that's being pointed to in the collective consciousness and in our individual consciousness these days. You can talk about waking up for your own benefit, and it certainly can seem that way. I can remember who this body-mind unit was when she had that motivation. But the reality of what it implies and what it is actually happening when one releases the illusion, the fear-based illusion of a 3D separate reality where you've got to avoid something or get something to be okay, which keeps you identified as a person. when you know the work that you're about is to wake up out of that delusion. It's worse than an illusion, it's a delusion. And in that spacious awakening that arises, participate in ways that your mind could not make up. And until that awakening occurs, what's running that wounded identity self is the mind, because it was the mind that concluded, even without language, I don't matter. I don't deserve to live. I'm not good enough. And so that was the installation. See, the language was later on acquired, but the implication, the frequency of that conclusion was installed in that incident, in that interaction with an apparent other, being a caretaker or a parent or a sibling. And when that happened, it got installed, and now we are participating in creating this world of suffering, and we have our own version of it. When we drop the idea of being a person, the limited idea that is centered and informed by that conclusion, then we are energetically participating in a new possibility. And it's not fear-based anymore, and it's not mind-based anymore. So the mind we point to the garden story, right? The fall, where we were tempted and we fell for it, because that snake was so charming and said, "Go ahead and take a bite. You shall not surely die. Try it out. That's all right, no problem." And we fell for it. We loved the idea of being able to eat of something that had been forbidden by God. And in doing that, we took on a rational analytic mind based in language polarity and subject-object in duality, and underpinned by fear. Because once we were guilty of that sin, once we were guilty of it, fear follows guilt. If you're guilty of something, you're going to be afraid. It's like, you're right. It's like it sort of tells its own tale. So if this is a wake-up call, I don't think anybody in this room has not participated in their own work in what we would call the wake-up call, the invitation to wake up out of the limited idea of being a person and falling into the love of true nature, of coming home, and as T.S. Eliot said, knowing it for the first time, coming home to this spacious, awake awareness out of which new possibilities arise. With the limited projection of our mind, projected through the distortion field of our woundedness, there are no answers out there. It's becoming more and more apparent in the projected reality. There's no solution at the level of the problem. But we go meta to the problem with our release out of wounding, fear-based polarity. And because we participate in the consciousness in which this reality arises, that's how we make a difference. In that shift in consciousness, we will know what's in front of us to do, and it will be easy and connecting and fun. I believe 3D realities are projected for fun. We've just missed that part somehow. So in a group on Tuesday morning, one of the things that occurred to me in my prior sitting before that group was the understanding of the way in which the tension and the anxiety and what we feel as pressure is created by the mind. That the true nature that we participate and share in our meditation, that we call awake awareness, that in that space, there isn't any of that anxiety, tension, or stress. And so to start to notice that the falling out of the mind and into the heart, which is represented as that field, that morphogenetic field of the love, of aliveness, of everything that we say we want. And so as we allow, it's an allowing process to open into that. It's a process of doing the work to dispel the illusion of being a person who's not good enough or not the one. And also coming home to be on your own side. So you're an expression of what's authentic for you. That's the high frequency. And the third part is to realize that if you're caught in anxiety or stress, you are in your mind and you don't have to stay there. You know the space of who you are. You know the consciousness of awake awareness. And it's already all that is. Everything arises in that. Even when what is arising, we distort with our fear-based lens. So there are a couple of things there that I wanted to share with all of you who are here and who are here. And I so value that you will show up and that we can be together in this consideration. Because time's up. It was an illusion anyway, but now it's. Somebody said, some scientist said, there's no such thing as time, and space is soon to follow. So we're here in the immense, scintillating, effulgent consciousness out of which everything arises, and we know ourselves as that when we're no longer caught in our limitation that was created unavoidably with the incarnating into this 3D reality. But we can be free now. We're called to freedom. So I'm open for silence, topics, questions.
So if you're in
Offerings.
the room here, you can just raise your hand and I'll call on you. If you're in the Zoom room, you can either do the raise hand icon or just unmute and I will pin you for people to see. Yeah, Faith.
Mute. Aloha,
Aloha. Who is this?
Faith.
Faith, and I'm calling from Mendocino County in Northern California.
Welcome.
Thank you. I got a call yesterday from the carer of my best friend in England, who has been my best friend for almost 50 years, that she's got 2 days, either 2 days or 2 weeks or maximum 3 months to live. And she's riddled with cancer, abdominal cancer. And it's just thrown me into a complete spin. And I think this kind of relates to what I remember of the last woman who spoke at the last meeting last week. Because what it's brought up in me is, as well as my grief for losing the closest person in my life, actually, is how little faith I really have accomplished after, 50 years, more, 53 years of seeking, being on a spiritual path.
These are the times when that whole opening gets larger for sure in your consciousness right now. It's open through your heart with your connection to her.
Yeah.
So part of this projection is the polarity that we call birth and death. And in that polarity, we've created what looks like what we call life, relying on a body being present in what we call a 3D reality. But this is just exactly like a nighttime dream. And when we sit up on the side of the bed in the morning, even when we've had the most amazing dream with the most amazing apparent other in our nighttime dream, when we sit up on the side of the bed, we don't grieve because the dream's over. We're in delight because we have had the dream. And in this way, you know, the mind's insistence on polarity creates birth and death. The mind's insistence on materiality creates that this is what's real. Well, what's real is who you are and who she is. And you all have had this amazing time in this lifetime together that way. But I mean, without being cavalier at all, because I so connect with the cycle that you're going through with your friend in great love and compassion. But without being cavalier, I have to say, we're all as dead now as we'll ever be. The life that we are does not depend on this body. It does not depend on this mind. It is what's already eternally true. And so relaxing into that. And again, I'm not cavalier because I've had experiences in this 84-year life that have had to do with what would seem to be losing people that I loved, including a son, including a husband, including a father and a mother. But I mean, the understanding that arises when you come home to yourself is that where would they go? That's what Ramana said to his devotee one time, who was so in sorrow because they thought Ramana was passing. And Ramana said, "What's wrong? Why are you so sad?" And the devotee said, "Because, Guru, we know that you're passing." And Ramana says, "Where would I go? Because this body mind is not it. It's not it. I am not this. I am not this. I am not this body. I am still as God created me. I am still as consciousness arising out of consciousness. We had the experience, the fun of this 3D reality through this body-mind unit. Yeah. I interrupted you, Faith.
Oh, no, sorry, I interrupted you. I was just going to say, I hear your words.
Yeah, I know.
And it feels like there's this kind of glass pane in between the words and the reality.
That's right.
Which, you know, is what I would like.
Yeah. Yeah. So just be close within yourself to your own heart and trust. You know, you have the love that you and she have shared, and that has been the gift. And at the same time that your heart is broken, that she's no longer going to be in this reality in a 3D way, you can be grateful for all of what has passed. She will be free, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing with us, Faith.
Thank you.
Yeah, this birth and death thing is a real sticky wicket. It is a high bar to allow, to let things be without the mind wanting to jump in and figure something out or make it a better possibility, and not trusting life.
It looks like Max's hand is up.
Maybe.
I think so.
Maxie.
Yeah,
Hey.
I wasn't raising my hand to talk. I was just,
You're just waving.
aloha.
Hello. That's what I thought.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hi, Max.
Aloha.
I will say something, Pali. Why is it we have so many sticky wickets in life? I mean, I like that you term it that way because, you know, I know we need to lighten up, and I know we need to lighten that up to all of the doom and gloom and disaster in our lives, especially now with all the wildfires.
Right.
It just seems one after the next.
Yeah.
Is it God challenging us or something? I'm not sure.
Well, what it is that we are in a distortion field of a polarity that has a frequency of fear. So that's kind of the, I mean, if there is any way to attribute or to understand it, it would be that you know, what we experience, and everybody kind of experiences differently because of their own distortion field, their own lens that their woundedness created. But as long as we identify with this body mind as the being who we are, and we believe that this material reality is the most important thing, and we're caught in the activity of getting something or avoiding something to try to assuage our fear or our discomfort, then it's that frequency is going to create sticky wickets. That's my best explanation.
That's a good one. Mahalo.
Thank you, sweetie. Thank you.
Yes, I noticed that, I think it was Faith who said something about, I've been doing this so long, I should know it by now. You know, and I think, I know that comes up for me too. I've been meditating for 30 years and you know, I look at that and I see that as just another way of not being living. Because when will I think I know it? You know, I mean, I don't know that that's, you know, maybe at intervals, small bits of time. Oh, I'm here, I'm in the middle of it. I'm in the moment.
Yeah, well, you know, the person's not gonna get it or wake up. But when the person's not activated in you, those are those moments that you're pointing to, right? Those are the moments that we all have until the fear-based persona has fallen away, and we're simply present as this, right? Operating through this body-mind unit. I call human design and astrology the owner's manual for this. So there's some ways in which it's helpful for us to know how this body-mind operates. But in terms of identification, that's the key. So when that identification falls away, and for all of us, oftentimes when it's happened, it's had to do with a transcendent experience in the material reality, or a beautiful scene, or it may have happened for you on your last trip that you just returned from to Alaska. You know, there's just this loss of the mind, the identification, the sense of limitation, and this experience of being one with everything. Right? So one of the things that happens that I don't, I'm sure some teachers point to, but one of the things that happens when you drop your personal ego, fear-based limitation, your self-judgment, I'm not good enough, I don't matter. When that's not in play, or when it's gone, there's no separation between you and reality. There's no other judgment. The only judgment is that lens that's created by our self-limiting, fear-based conclusion about ourselves. So in any moment when that's not operative, then we have the experience of connection, of ease, right? And no tension in the mind, and then no tension in the body. And so then we have this sense of no separation. The experience of separation and an out there that I need to get something from or contribute something to is created by the self-judgment. That is the distortion field. That's the lens. And when that is not, again, I'm repeating myself, I realized just now, I sound like a record that got stuck. when that's not in play, then we have the experience of the oneness.
For you, feel like you're repeating. For my mind here, seems like it's brand new content. I can grasp this time. Thank you for repeating yourself.
Thank you for the permission. Because I sometimes all of a sudden I heard what I was saying and I was just like, you just said that. Yeah, but it bears repeating, and I've been repeating it for a long time. I repeated it for a long time before I got it, before it was gotten here, right? And lived out of. But all judgment is self-judgment. Without self-judgment, there's none to go around.
Oh, Connie's raising her hand.
Connie.
Hi, Polly.
Hi, sweetheart.
Hey, I'm just so delighted to be part of this today. Everything you've said, it's like I've been up all night working on this jigsaw puzzles. And as you were talking, this part fell into place, and that part fell into place, and this one did, and that one did. And I was on a little Zoom Course in Miracles group this morning. And as you were talking, every single subject that we talked about, the piece fell into place. But there's one very specifically that I wanna mention, because the woman who was talking about facing loss and grief and how painful that is, and that glass, we hear the words, we know it all. Yeah, you're right, but it sometimes it's hard to connect with. And so what happened on the Zoom call this morning, this woman who's, struggles a little bit financially, and her car broke, and she found another car that she can afford, a used car. And she's so excited, and she's just like beside herself, and the things in her life, other things that she's been struggling with, they all faded away because she's just like so happy. And so I said to her, and because I'd never quite felt it in the same way as I did when she was talking about her car, because last week she was talking about her husband, and it wasn't so good. And so I said to her, I want you to be happy. Yay, I'm happy you're happy. But I wonder if it bears looking at the times in our lives when we're so desperately sad versus when we're so, out of control happy. And as you know, Polly, I've struggled in the last year or 15 months with the physical stuff. And you said to me at one point, you said it's a high bar. We were talking about pain and that instant identification that comes with pain. And I imagine it's the same instant identification when there's loss and grief too, that identification and how to give that up. And the reason I'm bringing that up right now is because I am like out dancing in the streets. I am so happy. And of course, a week after we got back from Arizona, of course, there's the fires in Lahaina. And so there's a sense of dissonance for me. I'm going, whoa, I'm back. I got my life back. Yay, I can dance again. And then, we look across the island at what's happening over there. And so there's almost this sense of, I just need to not be so happy. I need to not feel that. And I know there's the appropriateness of when to share and when not to share, and to empathize with the people that are around me. But that's a pretty high bar too, is not being really happy when you're really happy, right? When you get the good end of the stick, when it looks like I finally got the good end of this stick, right?
Yeah.
So that's it.
That's beautiful, Connie. Thank you so much. Yeah, the whole point is to drop the stick, right? So that we're not caught at the polarity, because it is the comparative. That's how we sort of believe that we experience happy because of the contrast to unhappiness, or we experience whatever as the polarity. But if we drop that stick, then we know that we're meta to that, and it's not about the polarity here. Because if you pick up the stick, you're going to be caught at one end or the other. Just like your friend going from husband to car, it's like, what's the problem? There will be a problem. Yeah. So happy is always of the heart. True happy is, but the idea of getting something or avoiding something in order to create a condition that I then describe or have labeled as happy, that's the illusion, because there's nothing out there to get. What we're always only looking for is who is the is the reveal and then the correction, if it's off, of who we're being to ourselves, because that creates the connection to the field and to the true satisfaction of loving what is, pointing to our friend Byron Katie's book. So it's like getting off the stick, allowing the expansion of consciousness to remind ourselves that we are that awake awareness in which everything arises, including this body-mind unit, including what we call the conditions that are here, and always with the caveat that what you are seeing as the conditions, until you've cleared the self-judgment of the early wounding, will be distorted through your lens of self-identification. So there is, it's kind of amazing grace that we get to experience apart from what we have imposed as limitations on our own consciousness. We do have those moments. We do have those awakening cycles. We do have those interactions with our worlds that just lift us up. And we have the other end of that stick too there. Oh, but we can come home to ourselves, where I think all of you know the title of the book I'll never write, which is What If Nothing's Wrong? It's just what's happening, and our willingness to be with that without the polarity of it needs to change or it's got to be different. Without that going on, our participation in the frequency of possibility arises in a way that can create a new world, and for ourselves and for our all of us. It's in every one of us.
So then,
Go ahead.
just one quick follow-up question. What occurred to me is that the 6 steps, we use the 6 steps diligently to get out of the bad stuff.
Right.
And 6 steps also might bear looking at when the stuff is like really good too. You think?
Well, if you consider being happy a trigger, go for it. Right? It's like, yeah, because you might find some joyful childhood memory in there somewhere. When you felt that comfort of being the cared for infant or toddler or whatever.
I'll go looking for that. Thank you, Connie.
Yeah, and you'll have to report to me, Connie.
Marcy has a, thank you, Connie.
So about that, the trigger of happy
Right,
is the trigger of loss. So it's that I'm happy for a reason,
right.
and I can totally relate to that. I mean, that's the whole idea. It's like I feel happy for something, but I get that there's a total trap in that.
That's right. That's right. That is on the stick. That's why you wrote the book, right?
Right.
It is. It's not happy for no reason.
reason.
We have the pleasure of your company today, famous author. Yeah, yeah. There's a story that I love to tell about the little woman who was in her, probably my age, but she was old, and she had lived at subsistence level, and she was living on Maui, and she had a little plot of ground that she could barely grow one sweet potato in or two, and she had younger neighbors, and one day one of the younger neighbors stopped by and she said, we noticed that you're always happy, you're always singing, and we know you don't have enough money, and we know that you're in pain a lot of the time, and yet we see. And the little old lady said, I don't have enough money, I'm in pain most of the time, I barely have enough to eat, I should be unhappy too. So that's directly to your title. I always think she's like half Japanese, Hawaiian, Chinese, and a little Jewish. Where are we?
We have about 10 more minutes.
10 minutes for some elucidating, enlightening sharing.
I have a question. I
Yeah,
don't know how
listen.
enlightening there will be, maybe with your help, that will come. And I have a lot of kind of religious programming that really anchored in this, there's bad, there's good. And if you go the right way, you'll have a good, happy life. If you go the wrong way, it will be really bad. And, you know, that's both on like a physical plane in my subconscious, and then if there's it on the existential plane. And as I've gone on my spiritual path, I've managed to find ways to experience that in spiritual context. So still sort of the same kind of heaviness of this fear of making the wrong decision and I find this sort of, it's this heaviness that I carry, and I'm not quite sure how to, as I hear you speak, and I was just, you know, been reflecting, I see how much of an ego attachment it is to the whole idea of the way things are. And it's, I feel myself seeking some sort of permission to step outside of that, but I'm almost afraid to, because then I'm bypassing, you know, how to go the good path. You know? Yeah, so I just present that.
Yeah, the mind is a bad neighborhood, isn't it? It's like, oh my God, don't go there. Yeah, so one of the things that happens with our early wounding, and then all the conditioning, whatever the circumstances might be, like in your case with the religiosity or whatever that was. But one of the things that happens is that when we believe, when we conclude, I don't matter, I'm not good enough, it's as if our attention particles, which have been for the infant to whatever degree, like this, you know, like the little swaddled infant, like this. And then all of a sudden, mommy and daddy have a fight, or you don't get fed on time, and your attention particles are magnetized into the external. Then what happens is that we start to create what I call adaptive behaviors to try to navigate what's going on out here, right? Maybe if I smile, maybe if I'm quiet, maybe, you know, we start to take on adaptive behaviors. When that occurs, authenticity is gone. We are never going to be free then to express what's really going on with us, because we know that it has consequences. We've experienced that it has consequences. And so what we've done in the language that I use with what I call my kindergarten models of reality is that we have abandoned ourselves, and we're magnetized into an external reality, trying to avoid something or get something. And the reason I'm laying this out in this way is because what we are no longer available for is being with ourselves on our own behalf. And so it's like we have to reclaim our attention from out there, where we've been a people pleaser, or maybe a shit stirrer, or whatever version of dealing with out there that we thought would keep us safe or give us something that we thought we wanted. Whatever that's been going on, it has to fall away so that we come back to ourselves and start to tell ourselves the truth about what I want to experience. And because what you'll find out is that you haven't had a clue this whole lifetime. It's like, because that got immediately put to the side. That was immediately turned away from. No attention there, except in the idea that I can get something or avoid something, which makes everything, all of our motivation transactional. So now we're like this, looking for love in all the wrong places. So one of the first practices, besides the 6 steps, one part of the waking up process that I work with people and we do together is to start to be on your own side, to start at least to tell yourself the truth. It can be as simple as having told somebody you would go on a hike with them, and they show up and you realize that you really need to have alone time. And you actually say, I apologize. I intended to go on the hike, but I'm not going to be able to do that. start to make these little incursions into being on your own behalf, because it was self-abandonment that occurred with the early wounding. So what you're asking about is, how do I know what to do? Because I'm caught in this polarity of this religiosity, of this idea about reality, and my decisions are important. They're paramount. They can make all the difference, right? But what you see, once you come back to being on your own side and you start asking that question, some of that clears up. Does that make sense, Lizzie?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it can be the smallest thing. You will, and we always are, all of us are amazed at all the ways in which we self-abandon, little ways and large ways. So if that's one direction. The 6 steps, do you have that information?
I do.
Okay, yeah, to use that feeling that you described as a trigger and to do the 6 steps on that, so that you can find, get in touch with the early wounded conclusion.
And so shifting to that, that real moment to moment, what is actually true, that's like stepping out of the external control, attempts at controlling things by, if I make that decision, that will be that way or that. But it's just, so it's like letting go of that whole reality, and then just it flows naturally from just that truthful moment to moment.
Brilliant. That's right. What may be helpful is that there is nothing but now. So it's not a moment to moment. They're not little intersections in time that are at the moment. It's like, it's always this. So in this, what you just described is a perfect shift in perception that will start to anchor you in a feeling of being present. And that will start to ease the concern about choices and decisions. Typically, with the aliveness that is our true nature, more and more knowing ourselves as that, I often make a point that decide has the same suffix as matricide, homicide, fresh. It means to kill something, right? It's like, but that's really hardly ever necessary. It's like the wisdom of arising reveals, and then we take that move, or we're acting. So there's not such need to decide. Thanks, Lizzie. I'm so glad you're here today.
Thank you, Lizzie. We just have a couple minutes if anybody has a last question or thought you'd like to share with Polly. Yeah, Robert.
When you were speaking with the lady, on the phone or the computer there about 10 minutes ago, I think you said that true happiness is always of the heart, and then we are always looking for, and I didn't catch what came after, we're always looking for.
Well, we tend to be looking for it externally.
Okay.
But when you are back with yourself, without the distortion field of the self-judgment, that's what's already true. We don't have to try to create our true nature. We are already that. We have to let go of everything that's not that. So there was a medieval mystic monk named Meister Eckhart, and my favorite quote from him is that spiritual awakening or spirituality is always a matter of subtraction. It's a matter of letting go of everything. It's like some people tell the story of Michelangelo with David, said he just took away the marble that wasn't a statue, right? We simply let go of everything that's not already who I am. So it's an innate, already present. The awake awareness is alive and well. There's a statement in the Bible that says, I don't know, maybe Jesus said it to the disciples when they were talking about being good or being whatever, and he said, only God is good. Our true nature is that, and it is good. And his awake awareness is the source and the arising of realities. and it is good, and only when it's distorted by the mind, typically, with some judgment, self-judgment usually, does it create difficulty and separation and the need again to get or avoid.
Polly. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Robert and Linda, for hosting us here in this beautiful space. And thank you, everyone who's made donations to Polly. If you'd like to make a donation to Polly, please, that's quite welcome. And we will just pause here and take a minute to let anybody go who wants to go, and go into a 45-minute silent meditation. If you're in the room, you can lay down, you can get comfortable however you like. And we will continue the dive.